The threat changed everything. Not because it was violent. Because it was personal. Inside Olivia Reed's office, nobody spoke for nearly a minute after reading the message. The surveillance photograph remained on the screen. 3 figures standing outside Thomas Keller's abandoned house. Ethan. Nathan. Olivia. Observed. Documented. Tracked. The image felt invasive. Uncomfortable. Deliberate. The message beneath it felt worse. Stop now. Next time we won't ask. Olivia finally broke the silence. They know exactly what we're doing. Nathan nodded. His expression unusually serious. Because there was no longer any room for doubt. The investigation wasn't hidden anymore. Someone had been watching them. Watching carefully. Ethan stared at the photograph. The anger inside him continued growing. Not fear. Not panic. Anger. For 15 years someone had manipulated the truth. And now they expected him to walk away. The request felt insulting. Nathan leaned forward. We need to slow down. Ethan immediately looked up. No. The answer came too fast. Too firm. Too certain. Nathan expected it anyway. That's exactly what worries me. A pause. Long enough for Ethan to understand what Nathan meant. Long enough to ignore it. Olivia closed the laptop. Slowly. Carefully. We need to assume everything changes now. Nathan nodded. Phones. Emails. Meetings. Locations. She counted them one by one. If they're watching us, we stop assuming privacy exists. The room grew quiet. Because everyone knew she was right. The rules had changed. The investigation had entered a new phase. And new phases create new dangers. Across Manhattan, Clara Higgins sat alone inside her apartment. Her phone rested beside her. Silent. Unchanged. Hours had passed since she called Ethan. Still no response. No explanation. No message. Nothing. The disappointment felt foolish. She hated that. Hated how much it bothered her. Hated how much she cared. Most of all. She hated not knowing why. A small part of her wanted to believe he was busy. Another part wasn't so generous. Maybe he didn't want to talk. Maybe he was moving on. Maybe she had imagined the connection between them entirely. The thoughts arrived one after another. Each worse than the last. Meanwhile, across the city, Ethan remained inside Olivia's office. Completely unaware of the damage caused by one missed call. His attention remained fixed on the surveillance photograph. Specifically the angle. The distance. The location. The person behind the camera. Because whoever took the image wasn't an amateur. The composition was clean. The timing perfect. The photographer had known exactly where to stand. Exactly when to wait. Exactly what to capture. Professional. The realization bothered Ethan more than the threat itself. Because professionals don't appear by accident. Professionals get hired. Which meant somebody was investing resources into stopping them. Real resources. Nathan stood near the window. Watching traffic below. Thinking. Then something occurred to him. A possibility. An uncomfortable one. What if Hawthorne already knows we're looking at him? The question changed the room immediately. Because nobody had considered it. Not directly. Olivia answered first. He probably does. Nathan nodded. The logic felt obvious once spoken aloud. If they were being watched, then Michael Hawthorne's name was no longer secret. The investigation wasn't surprising anyone anymore. The other side was already responding. Already adapting. Already moving. Which meant Ethan and his team were no longer chasing the conspiracy. They were interacting with it. The distinction mattered. A lot. Outside, Manhattan continued glowing beneath the night sky. Thousands of lights. Millions of people. Countless secrets. Somewhere among them, Michael Hawthorne was alive. Watching. Waiting. And for the first time in 15 years, someone had finally come close enough to threaten him. Nobody slept that night. Not really. Sleep requires peace. And peace had become a luxury none of them could afford. At 3:13 in the morning, Ethan Vance stood alone inside his penthouse office. The lights were off. Only the Manhattan skyline illuminated the room. The surveillance photograph rested on his desk. Beside it sat the accident photograph. 2 images. 15 years apart. Connected by secrets. Connected by people. Connected by a truth someone desperately wanted buried. Ethan stared at both photographs. Comparing them. Thinking. Searching for details everyone else missed. His phone buzzed. Nathan. Again. Ethan answered immediately. You should be asleep. Nathan laughed softly. So should you. Fair point. For a moment neither spoke. Years of friendship made silence comfortable. Eventually Nathan broke it. Tell me you're at least considering slowing down. Ethan looked at the surveillance photo. No. Nathan sighed. Exactly the answer he expected. Exactly the answer he didn't want. Because Ethan had crossed a line. Not a physical line. A psychological one. The moment Ethan believed someone was hiding the truth about his mother, stopping became impossible. Nathan understood that. Which was why he was worried. Very worried. Then somebody needs to start thinking defensively. The statement caught Ethan's attention. What do you mean? Nathan walked toward his apartment window. Watching darkness settle across the city. I mean somebody is watching us. A pause. And we're acting like they're not. The truth landed heavily. Because Nathan was right. For days they had focused entirely on discovering answers. Almost no effort had gone toward protecting themselves. That would have to change. Across town, Olivia Reed had reached the same conclusion. Her apartment looked more like an investigative command center than a home. Documents covered the dining table. Maps occupied an entire wall. Multiple laptops glowed in the darkness. Coffee cups stood everywhere. The apartment belonged to a woman preparing for a fight. And Olivia knew it. She sat before a screen displaying photographs of the mysterious black sedan. Different locations. Different times. Same vehicle. Same presence. The pattern bothered her. Because patterns reveal intention. And this one felt intentional. Very intentional. She enlarged one image. Then another. Searching for details. A sticker. A reflection. A registration number. Anything. For the first time in her career, she wasn't just investigating. She was being investigated too. The distinction felt deeply uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Clara Higgins stared at her. Ceiling. Wide awake. The missed call replayed endlessly inside her head. Not the call itself. The silence afterward. The lack of response. The uncertainty. Eventually she sat up. Frustrated. Because she was tired of wondering. Tired of guessing. Tired of letting one unanswered call control her mood. Unfortunately, knowing something is irrational rarely stops it from hurting. Her phone remained on the nightstand. Silent. Motionless. Mocking her. The temptation to call again briefly appeared. Then disappeared. No. If Ethan wanted to talk, he knew where to find her. Across Manhattan, Nathan arrived at Ethan's penthouse shortly before sunrise. Neither bothered asking why. The answer was obvious. The investigation had become bigger than all of them. Nathan placed a folder on the desk. Ethan glanced down. What is this? Protection. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Nathan almost smiled. Almost. I started looking into everyone connected to the investigation. That immediately captured Ethan's attention. Nathan opened the folder. Inside sat photographs. Addresses. Employment histories. Connections. People connected to Richard Ashford. People connected to Michael Hawthorne. People connected to the old Vance Holdings leadership team. For the first time, they weren't just reacting. They were preparing. The realization felt important. Because survival often belongs to whoever adapts first. Across the city, Olivia finally discovered something. Not a breakthrough. Not yet. But close. A pattern. The black sedan had appeared near 4 different locations. Her office. Vance Holdings. Ethan's penthouse. Thomas Keller's abandoned house. The realization sent a chill through her. Because those weren't random locations. Those were investigation locations. Someone wasn't watching people. Someone was watching the investigation itself. The distinction changed everything. Immediately she called Ethan. 5 minutes later, Nathan joined the conversation. 3 voices. 1 conclusion. The surveillance wasn't personal. At least not originally. It was operational. Strategic. Professional. Whoever organized it cared about information. Not intimidation. The threat came later. After they got too close. Ethan stood near the penthouse window as the city slowly awakened below. Morning light crept between skyscrapers. Traffic increased. The world moved forward. Yet something felt different. For the first time since his mother's death. He wasn't looking backward anymore. He was moving toward something. Toward answers. Toward danger. Possibly both. And somewhere beyond the skyline. A man named Michael Hawthorne was almost certainly aware of it. The realization should have been frightening. Instead, it made Ethan more determined than ever. Some mistakes happen because people make bad choices. Others happen because life has terrible timing. The missed call belonged to the second category. Unfortunately, Clara Higgins didn't know that. By Monday morning, she had reached a decision. A painful one. But a necessary one. She wasn't calling Ethan again. The thought hurt more than she expected. Which annoyed her. Because she was supposed to be moving forward. Not standing still. Not waiting. Not wondering why a billionaire who hadn't returned her call occupied so much space inside her thoughts. Yet here she was. Doing exactly that. Inside her apartment, Clara stood before the bathroom mirror preparing for work. The reflection staring back looked tired. Not physically. Emotionally. The last few weeks had changed everything. Ethan had changed everything. And now. The silence between them felt larger than ever. She finished getting ready. Picked up her purse. Then paused. Her eyes drifted toward her phone resting on the kitchen counter. No messages. No missed calls. Nothing. The screen remained empty. Eventually she looked away. Enough. If Ethan wanted to talk to her, he knew how. The next move was his. Or there would be no next move at all. Across Manhattan, Ethan finally noticed something. Something he should have noticed days earlier. Something hiding in plain sight. It happened while reviewing call logs on his phone. Nathan sat nearby sorting through investigation notes. The morning had been productive. Focused. Efficient. Then Ethan froze. Only briefly. But Nathan noticed immediately. What? Ethan stared at the screen. Confused. Then surprised. Then concerned. Because there it was. One missed call. 3 nights ago. Clara Higgins. For several seconds he simply looked at it. As if the call might somehow explain itself. Nathan leaned closer. Then smiled. A dangerous smile. The kind friends wear when they realize they've discovered something interesting. Well. Ethan looked up. Nathan folded his arms. When exactly were you planning to tell me about that? Ethan ignored the question. Mostly because he didn't have an answer. The realization arrived all at once. Clara called. Not texted. Not messaged. Called. Which meant something. People don't make difficult calls casually. Especially not after an argument. Especially not Clara. The timing suddenly made sense. The missed call happened during the surveillance photograph discovery. The threat. The email. The warning. Everything collided at once. And Clara paid the price. Nathan watched the realization unfold. Then asked the obvious question. Are you going to call her? The answer should have been simple. Instead, Ethan remained silent. Because relationships had never been his strength. Negotiations? Easy. Business? Easy. Hostile takeovers? Surprisingly easy. Emotions? Not so much. Nathan shook his head. You know she's probably assuming you ignored her. That landed harder than Ethan expected. Because she probably was. And honestly, she wouldn't be wrong to think it. The silence stretched. Finally Nathan stood. I've known you a long time. Ethan already disliked where this conversation was going. Nathan continued anyway. You're treating this investigation like it's the only thing that matters. A pause. It isn't. The words lingered. Long after Nathan stopped speaking. Across town, Clara arrived at the restaurant. The lunch crowd had already begun forming. Customers filled tables. Conversations blended together. Life continued. Ordinary. Predictable. Safe. At least on the surface. Inside, however, Clara felt anything but safe. Because uncertainty is exhausting. And she was tired. Tired of replaying moments. Tired of guessing intentions. Tired of wondering whether she mattered to someone who clearly had larger problems to worry about. An older customer. Noticed immediately. Some people simply possess that ability. The woman smiled warmly. Bad day? Clara returned a polite smile. Something like that. The customer studied her for a moment. Then nodded. As if she understood more than Clara said. Sometimes silence tells us less than we think. The statement caught Clara off guard. Because it sounded oddly specific. Almost personal. Before Clara could respond, another customer required attention. The moment passed. Yet the words remained. Silence tells us less than we think. Back at the penthouse, Ethan continued staring at Clara's missed call. The longer he looked, the worse he felt. Because suddenly he saw the situation through her eyes. She gathered the courage to call. He never answered. He never called back. Days passed. Nothing. The message seemed obvious. even if it wasn't true. Nathan picked up his jacket, preparing to leave, then paused near the door. One final piece of advice. Whether Ethan wanted it or not, Richard Ashford can wait an hour. Ethan looked up. Nathan smiled. Some things are harder to get back than evidence. Then he left, leaving Ethan alone with the investigation. And a missed call that suddenly felt much more important than before. Across Manhattan, Clara carried a tray toward the dining room. Trying to focus. Trying to move on. Trying not to think about Ethan. Unfortunately, somewhere deep down, part of her still hoped the phone would ring. Some people disappear. Others simply step out of sight. Michael Hawthorne belonged to the second category. For days, Olivia Reed had been searching for him. Not the version that existed 15 years ago. Not the former head of corporate security. Not the man standing near the mysterious second vehicle. The man living today. The man who might still know the truth. And finally, she found him. The discovery happened just after noon. Olivia sat inside her office surrounded by screens, documents, and half-finished cups of coffee. A familiar environment. A familiar obsession. Then one search result caught her attention. Not because it mentioned Michael Hawthorne. Because it didn't. At least not directly. The company name seemed ordinary. A private security consulting firm. Small. Exclusive. Almost invisible. The sort of business powerful people hire when they don't want attention. Olivia opened the file. Then another. Then another. Slowly, the pieces began fitting together. The company officially belonged to someone else. A former military contractor. Respectable. Successful. Clean. Too clean. The deeper she looked, the more familiar names appeared. Former law enforcement. Former intelligence analysts. Former corporate security executives. And buried deep within the organizational records, one name appeared. Michael Hawthorne. Senior Strategic Advisor. Olivia sat back slowly. The feeling that followed wasn't excitement. It was concern. Because the picture she had imagined was wrong. Very wrong. She expected a retired executive. A forgotten man. Someone living quietly. Instead she found influence. Resources. Connections. Power. Real power. Immediately she called Ethan. 30 minutes later, he and Nathan arrived at her office. The moment they saw Olivia's expression, neither expected good news. They were right. What happened? Ethan asked. Olivia turned her monitor toward them. Michael Hawthorne isn't retired. Silence. Nathan stepped closer. What do you mean? Olivia opened another document. The company profile filled the screen. Private security operations. Corporate risk management. Strategic consulting. International clients. Millions in annual revenue. Nathan's expression darkened. Because suddenly everything felt much more dangerous. Ethan remained focused. Reading. Processing. Connecting dots. Then Olivia revealed the final piece. The one that mattered most. The company has worked with multiple organizations connected to Vance Holdings. The room became completely silent. Not because the connection was surprising. Because it confirmed something. Michael Hawthorne never truly left the Vance world. He simply moved into the shadows. The realization landed heavily. For years Ethan assumed the people connected to his mother's accident belonged to the past. Now he understood something terrifying. Some of them were still active. Still influential. Still connected. And possibly still protecting the same secret. Nathan crossed his arms. A habit that appeared more frequently every day. So he had access. Olivia nodded. Still does. The answer hung in the air. Because access changes everything. Access to information. Access to people. Access to power. The investigation no longer pointed toward forgotten history. It pointed toward living networks. Living relationships. Living consequences. Across Manhattan, Clara Higgins was trying very hard not to think about Ethan. Unfortunately, life had other plans. The restaurant's afternoon crowd had thinned. For the first time all day, things felt calm. Then one of the television screens above the bar changed. A local business segment appeared. Normally Clara ignored those programs. Today she happened to glance up. And immediately froze. Ethan. The footage was several months old. A charity fundraiser. A corporate interview. Nothing important. Nothing recent. Yet seeing him unexpectedly affected her more than she wanted to admit. The television showed a confident billionaire speaking about community programs and scholarship initiatives. Polished. Composed. Professional. The version of Ethan everyone else knew. Not the version she knew. Not the man who sat beside her in a quiet restaurant. Not the man who looked lost whenever conversations turned toward family. The contrast felt strange. And surprisingly emotional. One of her coworkers smiled. "That's your billionaire friend, right?" Clara nearly dropped the glass she was holding. "We're not friends." The answer arrived too quickly. Far too quickly. Her coworker laughed. "Sure." Then walked away. Leaving Clara alone with the television. And her thoughts. Back inside Olivia's office, Ethan continued studying Hawthorne's profile. The more he learned, the less he liked. The man wasn't hiding. Not really. He simply existed behind layers. Layers of money. Influence. Relationships. Protection. The sort of layers ordinary people never notice. The sort of layers investigations struggle to penetrate. Then Ethan noticed something else. A photograph. Recent. Only 6 months old. Michael Hawthorne standing beside several business leaders during a private event. The image wasn't remarkable. Until Ethan recognized one of the faces. Immediately. His stomach tightened. Because standing only a few feet away from Hawthorne was someone currently serving on the Vance Holdings board of directors. A current board member. Not former. Current. The room suddenly felt smaller. Olivia noticed his reaction. "What?" Ethan pointed toward the image. Nathan looked. Then froze. Because now they both understood. The connection wasn't historical. The connection was active. Present. Ongoing. And for the first time since the investigation began, Ethan realized the conspiracy might be much closer than anyone imagined. The most dangerous discoveries are the ones that refuse to stay in the past. By Tuesday morning, Ethan Vance could no longer convince himself that the investigation was uncovering old secrets. The evidence pointed somewhere else. Somewhere far more unsettling. The present. Inside Vance Holdings headquarters, the city skyline stretched beyond the executive floor. Employees moved through hallways. Meetings happened. Deals progressed. The company functioned exactly as it always had. Yet Ethan couldn't shake a growing suspicion. Someone connected to the truth might still be inside these walls. The thought followed him everywhere. Into meetings. Into elevators. Into conversations. Because every new discovery seemed connected to people who never fully disappeared. Richard Ashford. Michael Hawthorne. Current board members. Old relationships. New influence. The network remained alive. And Ethan was standing in the middle of it. Across town, Olivia Reed was focused on a different problem. The black sedan. The same vehicle continued appearing. Again. And again. And again. 3 new photographs covered her desk. Different locations. Different days. Same car. Same behavior. The pattern had become impossible to ignore. Olivia enlarged the images. Compared timestamps. Mapped locations. Then she saw it. Not just a pattern. A strategy. Immediately she called Nathan. 20 minutes later they sat together inside her office. Nathan studied the photographs carefully. Then frowned. What am I missing? Olivia pointed to a map displayed on her monitor. Colored markers appeared throughout Manhattan. Ethan's penthouse. Vance Holdings. Her office. Thomas Keller's abandoned house. Then another location. A restaurant. Nathan leaned closer. Confused. The restaurant? Olivia nodded slowly. The car appeared there twice. The room became very quiet. Because they both knew exactly which restaurant. Clara's restaurant. Nathan felt a cold sensation settle into his stomach. Not fear. Concern. Because until now the surveillance focused on the investigation. If Clara was being watched too. Everything changed. Back at Vance Holdings, Ethan sat inside a board meeting pretending to pay attention. Pretending. The discussion centered around quarterly forecasts. Market projections. Corporate growth. None of it registered. Instead, his attention remained fixed on one person sitting across the table. A current board member. The same man appearing beside Michael Hawthorne in the recent photograph. The connection bothered him. Not because it proved anything. Because it created possibilities. And possibilities were becoming increasingly dangerous. The meeting ended 40 minutes later. Ethan remained seated. Watching. Thinking. Questioning. For the first time in his career, he wasn't sure who he could trust. Across Manhattan, Clara Higgins was having her own difficult day. The restaurant was busy. Crowded. Loud. Normally that helped. Busy environments prevented overthinking. Today they weren't helping at all. Because Ethan seemed to appear everywhere. A television interview. A newspaper headline left behind by a customer. A passing mention during conversation. Every reminder reopened the same question. Why didn't he call back? The uncertainty frustrated her. More than she wanted to admit. More than made sense. Then something unexpected happened. A customer arrived. Not unusual. People arrived constantly. This man felt different. Mid-50s. Well-dressed. Expensive watch. Observant eyes. The sort of person who noticed everything. He chose a table with a clear view of the entrance. Then remained there. For a long time. Longer than normal. Long enough for Clara to notice. The man ordered coffee. Nothing else. Hours passed. The coffee remained. The man remained too. Watching. Not aggressively. Not obviously. Yet something about him felt wrong. The sensation lingered. A small discomfort she couldn't explain. Later that evening, Olivia shared her findings with Ethan and Nathan. The atmosphere inside Ethan's penthouse grew noticeably heavier. You're certain? Ethan asked. Olivia nodded. As certain as I can be. Nathan stared at the restaurant photograph. Then at Clara's name. The implications felt obvious. And deeply concerning. Do you think they're watching her? Olivia hesitated. Because certainty remained dangerous. Then, I think they're watching anyone connected to the investigation. The answer wasn't reassuring. Not remotely. Because Clara wasn't part of the investigation. At least she wasn't supposed to be. Yet somehow, the lines were beginning to blur. Ethan walked toward the penthouse window. The city lights reflected across the glass. His thoughts drifted toward Clara. Toward the missed call. Toward the unanswered questions between them. And suddenly a realization struck him. If someone truly was watching her, then his silence had become more than a personal mistake. It might have become a risk. A risk Clara never agreed to take. The thought unsettled him. Deeply. Because for the first time, the investigation wasn't threatening only the people asking questions. It was beginning to threaten the people they cared about. And somewhere across Manhattan, a man sitting inside a restaurant quietly watched Clara Higgins. Waiting. Observing. Reporting. The most frightening moves happen when nobody realizes a game is being played. By Thursday morning, the investigation had entered dangerous territory. Not because Ethan, Olivia, and Nathan were getting closer to the truth. Because someone else knew they were getting closer. And that someone had started moving pieces of their own. Inside Olivia Reed's office, 3 photographs covered her desk. The same man appeared in all of them. Different days. Different locations. Same face. Same watchful expression. The man from Clara's restaurant. The man sitting for hours over a single cup of coffee. The man observing without participating. The man Olivia finally identified. Her stomach tightened as the old corporate photograph remained open on her screen. There he was. 15 years younger. Standing beside Michael Hawthorne. Not front and center. Not important enough to attract attention. Just another face in the background. The sort of face people forget. Unless they know where to look. Olivia knew where to look. Immediately. She picked up her phone. Nathan answered first. Then Ethan. Within 20 minutes, all 3 sat together inside a private conference room at Vance Holdings. The atmosphere felt heavier than usual. Because Olivia sounded genuinely concerned. And that rarely happened. She projected the photograph onto the screen. The younger image beside the recent one. No doubt. No ambiguity. Same man. Nathan leaned forward. Who is he? Olivia opened another file. Former corporate investigator. Contract security consultant. Occasional private surveillance specialist. A man who spent years working alongside Michael Hawthorne. Not directly employed. Not officially connected. Exactly the kind of relationship that worried Olivia most. Because unofficial relationships leave fewer records. Fewer trails. Fewer mistakes. Ethan studied the image. Then asked the question everyone was thinking. Why Clara? The room became quiet. Because nobody had a good answer. Not yet. Nathan finally spoke. Maybe she isn't the target. A pause. Maybe you are. The possibility landed hard. Because it made sense. If Clara represented a connection to Ethan, watching her might simply be another way of watching him. The realization left a bitter taste. Because Clara never asked to become part of this. She never chose any of it. Meanwhile, across Manhattan, Clara spent the morning in a surprisingly good mood. The conversation with Ethan lingered. Not because everything was fixed. It wasn't. Not even close. But something important had happened. Honesty. For the first time in weeks, neither had hidden behind anger. Neither had hidden behind pride. The wall between them hadn't disappeared. But cracks had finally appeared. And sometimes that's enough. As she arranged menus near the restaurant entrance, her phone buzzed. A message. From Ethan. Simple. Direct. Unexpected. Thank you for talking to me yesterday. Clara stared at the screen. Then smiled despite herself. A small smile. The kind nobody else noticed. Unfortunately, someone else noticed everything. Across the street, a man sitting inside a parked vehicle lowered a pair of binoculars. Made a note. Then reached for his phone. Elsewhere, Olivia's investigation uncovered something worse. Much worse. A former Vance Holdings employee. One of the last people connected to Richard Ashford's executive team. A man named Daniel Mercer. For 2 days Olivia had attempted to contact him. No response. Not unusual. Yesterday she tried again. Still nothing. Today she discovered why. Daniel Mercer was gone. Not dead. Not officially. Just gone. His apartment sat empty. His phone disconnected. His social media accounts inactive. Neighbors reported moving trucks arriving unexpectedly 3 nights earlier. No forwarding address. No explanation. No goodbye. Olivia stared at the report. A familiar chill ran through her. Because she had seen this pattern before. Thomas Keller. A witness who vanished. Now Daniel Mercer. Another person connected to the story. The similarities felt impossible to ignore. Immediately she called Ethan. 30 minutes later, tension filled the conference room. Again. Nathan paced slowly. A habit returning whenever situations became complicated. And this situation was becoming extremely complicated. You think he ran? Nathan asked. Olivia shook her head. I don't know. A pause. But I know this. She looked directly at Ethan. People connected to this story keep disappearing. Nobody argued. Nobody could. The evidence spoke for itself. Ethan stood near the conference room window. Watching clouds move above Manhattan. Thinking. Connecting pieces. Watching people disappear. Watching surveillance increase. Watching threats become more direct. The pattern was becoming obvious. Someone wasn't protecting a secret anymore. Someone was protecting themselves. And that made them dangerous. Very dangerous. Later that evening, Ethan met Clara again. Only briefly. Coffee. Conversation. Normal things. Ordinary things. For 30 precious minutes, neither discussed surveillance. Or missing witnesses. Or Michael Hawthorne. They simply talked. Laughed once. Smiled more than expected. The simplicity felt refreshing. Human. Real. Neither realized that elsewhere in Manhattan, Daniel Mercer had already become the center of a city-wide search. And neither knew that before sunrise, someone else connected to the investigation would disappear too. The break-in happened sometime between midnight and 4 in the morning. Nobody heard it. Nobody reported it. Nobody saw anything. Which was exactly what made it terrifying. At 6:47 a.m., Olivia Ridd arrived at her office carrying a coffee and a growing list of things she planned to accomplish. By 6:48 a.m., every item on that list became irrelevant. The moment she stepped inside, something felt wrong. Not obvious. Subtle. The kind of feeling people often ignore. Olivia didn't. Her eyes immediately swept across the room. Desk. Bookshelves. Windows. Computer. Everything appeared normal. Almost. Then she noticed a drawer slightly open. Only an inch. Most people wouldn't have noticed. Olivia did. Because she never left drawers open. Slowly, she set her coffee down. Her pulse quickened. The office remained silent. Too silent. She crossed the room carefully. Opened the drawer. Looked inside. Empty. For a second she simply stared. Then another. The realization arrived gradually. Someone had been here. Someone had gone through her files. Someone had searched her office. Immediately she called Ethan. Then Nathan. Neither bothered asking questions over the phone. The urgency in her voice answered them already. 35 minutes later, all three stood inside the office. The atmosphere felt tense. Sharp. Wrong. Nathan examined the lock. No visible damage. Ethan checked the windows. Nothing. Professional. Everything about it felt professional. Olivia stood beside her filing cabinet. Still trying to understand what she was seeing. Or rather, what she wasn't seeing. Nathan finally asked the obvious question. What was taken? Olivia hesitated. Because that was the strangest part. Almost nothing. Her laptop remained. Her cameras remained. Her wallet remained. Even cash inside a desk drawer remained untouched. Whoever entered hadn't come to steal. They came for information. The realization chilled the room. Because information theft is personal. Intentional. Focused. Ethan looked around slowly. What file? Olivia walked toward the cabinet. Opened another drawer. Then another. Then stopped. Her expression changed immediately. Nathan saw it first. What? Olivia swallowed. The Hawthorne file. Silence. Instant silence. Because suddenly everything made sense. Not random. Not general. Specific. Very specific. The only missing file contained everything she had gathered about Michael Hawthorne. Photographs. Connections. Corporate records. Surveillance notes. Every piece of progress from the last week. Gone. Nathan exhaled slowly. Because that wasn't a warning anymore. That was an operation. Someone knew exactly what they wanted. And exactly where to find it. Ethan walked toward the window. The city moved normally outside. People heading to work. Cars filling streets. The ordinary world continuing uninterrupted. Yet inside this office, the situation had changed completely. The conspiracy wasn't hiding anymore. It was acting. Directly. Openly. Confidently. As if whoever stood behind it no longer cared whether they were noticed. Across Manhattan, Clara Higgins was completely unaware. Her day began like every other. Customers. Orders. Coffee cups. Conversations. Ordinary. Predictable. Safe. At least it appeared that way. Late that morning, a businessman entered the restaurant. Nothing unusual. The place attracted professionals constantly. Yet something about this customer caught Clara's attention. Not because he was important. Because he looked familiar. The feeling arrived immediately. A strange sense of recognition. The man sat near the window. Ordered coffee. Opened a newspaper. Normal. Completely normal. Still. Clara couldn't shake the feeling. She had seen him somewhere before. The problem was remembering where. Meanwhile, inside Olivia's office, the investigation was moving fast. Too fast. Nathan reviewed security footage from the building. Hours of recordings. Employees. Delivery drivers. Cleaning. Crews. Nothing. Then finally. A figure. One person. Appearing briefly inside a hallway camera. Cap pulled low. Face partially hidden. Professional. Again. Everything kept coming back to professional. Olivia leaned closer. Trying to identify the individual. Trying to find anything useful. Then Ethan noticed something. A watch. Simple. Ordinary. Yet strangely familiar. His eyes narrowed. The image triggered something. A memory. A corporate event. A handshake. A conversation years ago. The feeling vanished before he could grasp it fully. Frustrating. Elusive. Important. Nathan closed the footage. His expression dark. They wanted Hawthorne. Olivia nodded. No. A pause. They wanted to know how much we knew about Hawthorne. The distinction mattered. A lot. Because stealing information isn't just about removal. It's about assessment. Someone wanted to measure the threat. Measure progress. Measure danger. And that meant one thing. The investigation was working. Across town, Clara finally remembered where she had seen the businessman. Not in person. In a photograph. A photograph Ethan showed her accidentally days earlier while scrolling through investigation files. The realization hit instantly. Her heart skipped. Because the man drinking coffee near the window looked remarkably similar to someone connected to Michael Hawthorne. And for the first time, Clara unknowingly found herself closer to the mystery than ever before. Sometimes the smallest detail changes everything. A face. A name. A memory. The investigation had spent weeks chasing major discoveries. Yet on Friday morning, the most important breakthrough came from Clara Higgins. Completely by accident. Ethan arrived at the restaurant shortly after opening. Not because he was hungry. Because Clara's message sounded urgent. Unusually urgent. He found her near the back corner booth. Waiting. The moment she saw him, she stood. Concern visible across her face. Ethan immediately noticed. What happened? Clara hesitated. Not because she doubted herself. Because she wasn't sure how important the information might be. Then she described the man. The businessman. The coffee. The newspaper. The familiar face. As she spoke, Ethan's expression gradually changed. From curiosity to attention. Then finally, concern. You're sure? Clara nodded. As sure as I can be. A pause. I've seen him before. The answer mattered. Because Clara wasn't prone to exaggeration. If she remembered the face, there was probably a reason. Within an hour, Ethan, Nathan, and Olivia were reviewing photographs. Again. The investigation seemed permanently trapped inside photographs. Surveillance images. Corporate records. Archived event pictures. Old evidence. New evidence. Everything connected through images. Eventually Olivia found it. The same man. Standing several feet behind Michael Hawthorne at a private security conference. The confirmation changed the room instantly. Because Clara had unknowingly identified another connection. Another observer. Another piece of the network. Nathan leaned back slowly. They're getting careless. Olivia shook her head. No. A pause. They're getting confident. The distinction felt important. Very important. Meanwhile, Olivia spent the afternoon rebuilding everything stolen during the office break-in. Fortunately, years of investigative experience had made her cautious. Most documents existed in multiple places. Multiple formats. Multiple backups. Annoying. Paranoid. Useful. Especially now. Hours passed. Files reappeared. Photographs returned. Connections resurfaced. Then she discovered something she hadn't noticed before. A scanned document hidden inside an archived folder. The file appeared incomplete. Poorly copied. Partially damaged. Easy to overlook. Yet one word immediately caught her attention. Personnel. Olivia opened it. Silence filled the office. The document contained a list. Nothing more. Just names. Several dozen names. No explanation. No title. No description. Simply a collection of people connected to Vance Holdings during the years surrounding Victoria Vance's accident. At first glance, it seemed meaningless. Then Olivia began cross-checking. Her expression changed almost immediately. One name. Missing. Not dead. Gone. Another. Relocated without explanation. Another. Records sealed. Another. Unreachable. The pattern developed quickly. Far. Too quickly. The room grew colder with every discovery. Because the list wasn't random. The list connected people who had gradually disappeared over the last 15 years. Witnesses. Employees. Consultants. Executives. Individuals linked directly or indirectly to the accident. Nathan stared at the screen. Disbelief visible across his face. How many? Olivia continued counting. Then stopped. Because the answer was worse than expected. 8. Silence. Nobody spoke. Because 8 disappearances no longer felt like coincidence. 8 disappearances felt deliberate. Across Manhattan, Clara returned to work. Completely unaware she had helped trigger the biggest breakthrough in days. The restaurant remained busy. Normal. Ordinary. Yet for the first time, she noticed something. The familiar man never returned. Not that day. Not the next. Gone. As if he knew she recognized him. The thought unsettled her. Back inside Olivia's office, the investigation continued. The list remained displayed on the screen. Name after name. Connection after connection. Then Ethan froze. The reaction happened instantly. Sharp. Unexpected. Nathan noticed first. What? Ethan didn't answer. At least not immediately. Because one specific name had captured his attention. A name he knew personally. A name from his childhood. A man who attended company events. Family functions. Board celebrations. Someone trusted. Someone familiar. Someone Ethan hadn't thought about in years. The name sat quietly on the screen. Jonathan Pierce. Former legal advisor to Vance Holdings. Nathan frowned. You know him? Ethan nodded slowly. The realization felt deeply uncomfortable. Because unlike Richard Ashford, unlike Michael Hawthorne, Jonathan Pierce had never seemed suspicious. Never powerful. Never influential. Just present. Steady. Reliable. The kind of man people overlooked. Which suddenly made him very interesting. Olivia opened another database. Searching. Cross-checking. Then her eyes widened. The result appeared instantly. Jonathan Pierce wasn't missing. Not exactly. But according to every available record, nobody had seen him in almost 4 years. The room became silent once again. Because the list had just become personal. And personal investigations rarely stay safe for long. The name refused to leave Ethan's mind. Jonathan Pierce. Of all the names on Olivia's list, that one bothered him most. Because unlike Richard Ashford or Michael Hawthorne, Jonathan Pierce didn't belong in a conspiracy. At least not in Ethan's memories. He belonged to a different version of the past. A safer one. A simpler one. The kind people remember fondly. Which was exactly why Ethan no longer trusted it. Saturday morning arrived under a blanket of gray clouds. Inside his penthouse office, Ethan stood before a wall covered in photographs. Names. Timelines. Connections. Months ago, the wall would have looked insane. Now it looked necessary. Nathan entered carrying coffee. One cup immediately found its way into Ethan's hand. No words required. Years of friendship handled that part automatically. You didn't sleep. Nathan already knew the answer. Ethan ignored the observation. Also automatic. Instead, he pointed toward Jonathan Pierce's photograph. We start here. Nathan studied the image. Middle-aged. Professional. Forgettable. The sort of man nobody notices in a room full of executives. Which, Nathan suspected, was exactly why Pierce had survived so long inside corporate politics. What do you remember? Ethan looked toward the skyline. Thinking. Searching. Then finally, he was close to my mother. The answer surprised even him. Because he hadn't remembered it until that moment. A forgotten memory resurfacing from years beneath the surface. Nathan frowned. How close? Ethan hesitated. Not because he didn't know. Because the realization felt strange. Closer than most executives. A pause. He wasn't part of the business side. Another pause. My mother trusted him. The room became very quiet. Because trust had become an important word. A dangerous word. A word that kept appearing beside people who later disappeared. Across Manhattan, Olivia Reed was chasing a different lead. Jonathan Pierce's final months before vanishing. Most trails ended abruptly. Emails stopped. Phone records disappeared. Addresses became outdated. The pattern felt familiar. Too familiar. Then she found something. A communication request. Old. Archived. Almost forgotten. Olivia leaned closer. Her pulse quickened. The request occurred only 3 days before Pierce vanished. 3 days. Not months. Not years. Days. Someone had attempted to contact him. Or rather, Jonathan Pierce had attempted to contact someone else. The record didn't reveal the message. Only the destination. A private number. Unlisted. Protected. Yet still traceable. Olivia followed the trail. Then froze. Because the number connected to a name she already knew. Michael Hawthorne. For several seconds she simply stared. The implication settled slowly. Jonathan Pierce contacted Hawthorne shortly before disappearing. Not the other way around. Pierce reached out first. Which suggested something important. Something enormous. Pierce knew something. And whatever he knew frightened him enough to seek out the most dangerous man connected to the investigation. Immediately she called Ethan. The reaction was immediate. The atmosphere inside the penthouse changed. Again. Nathan paced. Again. Ethan stared at the evidence board. Again. The pattern had become impossible to ignore. People disappeared. People contacted Hawthorne. People vanished from records. The sequence repeated too often. Far too often. Across town, Clara Higgins sat inside a small coffee shop during her lunch break. For the first time in days, she wasn't thinking about missed calls. Or arguments. Or misunderstandings. She was thinking about danger. Real danger. Because Ethan had finally told her part of the truth. Not everything. Never everything. But enough. Enough to understand that powerful people were involved. Enough to understand that threats existed. Enough to understand that the situation wasn't ordinary. The realization left her unsettled. She stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, watching people pass outside. Then suddenly, her attention shifted. A black sedan rolled slowly past the window. Not unusual. Except she recognized it. Immediately. The same vehicle from Ethan's description. The same vehicle Olivia photographed. The same vehicle appearing everywhere. The car continued moving. Slowly. Patiently. Watching. For the first time, Clara felt genuine fear. Because suddenly the mystery wasn't Ethan's problem. Or Olivia's. Or Nathan's. It was becoming hers too. Back inside the penthouse, Ethan received another surprise. This one came from the building's security department. A simple report. Routine. Ordinary. At least until he read it. Then everything changed. The report contained multiple sightings. Same vehicle. Same individual. Different locations. Vance Holdings. His penthouse. Several restaurants. Even a charity event. The pattern was obvious. Someone had stopped hiding. Someone wasn't watching discreetly anymore. Someone wanted Ethan to know he was being followed. Nathan read the report. Then looked up. His expression darker than usual. That's not surveillance. Ethan frowned. What is it? Nathan placed the report down. A single answer. One Ethan already suspected. It's intimidation. The word hung heavily in the room. Because intimidation means confidence. Confidence means control. And control means someone believes they are winning. Ethan walked toward the window. The city stretched endlessly before him. Lights. Buildings. Secrets. Somewhere out there. Jonathan Pierce had disappeared. Somewhere out there. Michael Hawthorne knew why. And somewhere out there. Someone wanted Ethan to stop asking questions. Unfortunately for them. The questions were only getting bigger. Fear has a strange way of revealing what matters most. For weeks, Ethan Vance and Clara Higgins had been moving around each other. Close. Then distant. Connected. Then separated. Pulled together by circumstances. Pushed apart by misunderstandings. Yet somehow, the closer danger moved toward them, the harder it became to pretend their feelings weren't real. Sunday evening settled gently over Manhattan. The city glowed beneath a sky painted in shades of blue and gold. For once, neither Ethan nor Clara wanted to discuss conspiracies. Or missing witnesses. Or surveillance vehicles. They simply wanted a few hours that felt normal. A few hours that belonged to them. Ethan found her at a quiet riverside cafe overlooking the Hudson. The location felt peaceful. Removed from boardrooms. Removed from investigations. Removed from secrets. At least temporarily. Clara smiled when she saw him. Not the guarded smile from weeks ago. Not the uncertain smile from their recent conversations. A real smile. Small. Warm. Honest. And somehow that affected Ethan more than he expected. For a while they talked about ordinary things. Childhood memories. Favorite places. Embarrassing stories. The kinds of conversations people have when they finally stop protecting themselves. The kinds of conversations that matter. At one point Clara laughed. A genuine laugh. The sound caught Ethan completely off guard. Because it had been a very long time since anything felt this uncomplicated. For a brief moment, the investigation disappeared. The threats disappeared. The pressure disappeared. Only Clara remained. And that realization felt surprisingly dangerous. Because losing evidence is painful. Losing people is worse. Across town, Olivia Reed wasn't enjoying anything remotely peaceful. She sat surrounded by maps, records, and digital archives. Jonathan Pierce had become her entire world. Because every path seemed to lead back to him. Hours of searching finally produced something useful. A property transaction. Small. Remote. Forgettable. Exactly the kind of place someone might choose if they wanted to disappear. A cabin. Northern Pennsylvania. Purchased through an intermediary company. The transaction occurred only weeks before Jonathan Pierce vanished. Olivia stared at the address. Then immediately called Nathan. This might be it. Nathan was already reaching for his keys before she finished explaining. Because after weeks of dead ends, any lead mattered. Especially this one. Meanwhile, Ethan and Clara continued talking. The sun disappeared. The city lights brightened. The evening stretched comfortably around them. Then Clara became serious. The shift happened gradually. Almost invisibly. I was scared. The confession arrived quietly. Ethan looked at her. Confused. Of what? Clara hesitated. Searching for the right words. Then finally, that something would happen to you. The answer surprised him. Not because it was unreasonable. Because it was honest. Completely honest. For a moment Ethan didn't know what to say. The truth felt larger than language. Eventually he settled for honesty of his own. So was I. Clara blinked. You were scared? A faint smile appeared. Not for myself. Their eyes met. Neither looked away. And suddenly neither needed further explanation. Across Manhattan, Nathan arrived at Olivia's office. The moment he entered, she handed him a folder. No greeting. No small talk. No time. Nathan opened it immediately. His eyes moved across pages. Addresses. Transactions. Corporate records. Then suddenly he stopped. A single document caught his attention. The date. The location. The name. His pulse quickened. Because another connection had appeared. A hidden one. A dangerous one. Jonathan Pierce. Thomas Keller. The same rural county. The same 6-month period. The same network of intermediary companies. Nathan looked up. Disbelief written across his face. They knew each other. Olivia froze. What? Nathan handed over the file. The evidence wasn't perfect. But it was strong. Very strong. Jonathan Pierce and Thomas Keller had crossed paths. Not once. Multiple times. Years after the accident. Years after Keller disappeared. The room fell silent. Because suddenly the mystery shifted. Again. Jonathan Pierce wasn't just another missing person. He was connected to the witness. Which meant he might have known exactly what happened. And if he knew, someone else knew too. Elsewhere in Manhattan, Another man sat alone inside a luxury office. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Private security. Uninterrupted views of the city. Michael Hawthorne. For weeks he had watched from a distance. Observed. Evaluated. Measured. Now that was changing. A file rested on his desk. Inside were photographs. Ethan. Olivia. Nathan. Clara. The investigation. The relationships. The progress. Everything. Michael closed the folder slowly. His expression remained unreadable. Calm. Controlled. Patient. Then he reached for his phone. The first direct move. The first deliberate step. The first time he would stop watching and start acting. Across the city, Ethan and Clara stood near the river. Closer than they had ever been. Closer than either intended. Closer than either wanted to admit. And neither realized that somewhere in Manhattan, Michael Hawthorne had finally decided to enter the game himself. Every secret has a guardian. Every lie has a keeper. And eventually, every keeper decides whether to remain hidden. Sunday night arrived quietly. Too quietly. The city shimmered beneath thousands of lights. Traffic moved. People laughed. Restaurants filled. Life continued. Completely unaware that a 15-year-old mystery was about to change forever. Near the Hudson River, Ethan and Clara reluctantly said goodbye. Neither wanted the evening to end. Neither wanted to admit it. Yet both understood something important had happened. Trust had returned. Not completely. But enough. Enough to begin again. As Clara walked toward her apartment, her phone vibrated. A message. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Almost. Then she opened it. The message contained only a single sentence. No greeting. No explanation. No signature. Just words. You should stay away from Ethan Vance. Clara stopped walking. The city noise faded around her. For several seconds she simply stared. Then another message arrived. This one worse. Much worse. The attachment loaded slowly. A photograph. Clara felt her stomach tighten immediately. The image showed her apartment building. Taken recently. Very recently. The angle came from across the street. Professional. Deliberate. Watching. Another message appeared. You live alone. The blood drained from her face. Because suddenly the investigation wasn't something happening around Ethan. It was happening around her. Someone knew where she lived. Someone knew who she was. Someone wanted her afraid. And for the first time, it worked. Across Manhattan, Olivia and Nathan were already on their way to Pennsylvania. The lead couldn't wait. Jonathan Pierce's cabin represented the strongest lead they had found in weeks. Possibly years. The drive felt endless. Dark highways. Empty roads. Questions nobody could answer. Eventually, just before midnight, they arrived. The cabin stood alone among trees. Quiet. Forgotten. The perfect place to disappear. Nathan approached first. Flashlight in hand. Olivia close behind. The front door wasn't locked. That immediately bothered both of them. Because abandoned places should feel abandoned. This one felt prepared. Inside, dust covered most surfaces. Furniture remained untouched. Time seemed frozen. Then Olivia found something. A box. Hidden beneath loose floorboards. The discovery sent adrenaline rushing through both of them. Nathan carefully lifted it out. Old documents. Photographs. Letters. Records. Years of secrets buried beneath the floor. The evidence they had been chasing. The evidence someone desperately wanted hidden. Meanwhile, across the state line, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't studying files. He wasn't chasing leads. He wasn't investigating. He was thinking about Clara. A rare luxury. A dangerous luxury. His phone rang. Olivia. The moment he answered, he knew something had happened. Her voice sounded different. Shaken. Excited. Almost overwhelmed. Ethan. A pause. We found it. He stood immediately. What? Nathan's voice appeared in the background. Urgent. Disbelieving. Tell him. Olivia took a breath. Then another. As if preparing herself. We found Jonathan Pierce's records. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. And? Silence. A long silence. The kind that changes lives. Finally Olivia answered. We found photographs. The words alone felt important. Yet something in her voice suggested more. Much more. Ethan waited. Then came the sentence. The sentence that shattered everything. There are pictures of your mother. His grip tightened around the phone. For 15 years, every photograph of Victoria Vance belonged to the past. Every photograph ended at the accident. Every photograph ended that night. Or so everyone believed. Olivia's voice barely rose above a whisper. Ethan. Another pause. Long enough to make his heart race. Then, one of the photographs was taken after the night she supposedly died. The world stopped. Not literally. But close enough. The city vanished. The penthouse vanished. Everything vanished. Leaving only one impossible thought. That can't be true. Across Pennsylvania, Nathan slowly turned the photograph toward Olivia. Toward himself. Toward the flashlight beam. The image showed Victoria Vance standing beside a lakeside cabin. Older. Alive. Smiling. And in the corner of the photograph. A handwritten date. 6 weeks after the accident. 6 weeks after her funeral. 6 weeks after the world buried her. Back in Manhattan, Ethan couldn't speak. Couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. Because if the photograph was real, then his mother didn't die that night. And if she didn't die that night, then nothing was what it seemed. Not the accident. Not the cover-up. Not the last 15 years. Somewhere across the city, Clara sat frozen inside her apartment staring at the threatening messages. Somewhere in Pennsylvania, Olivia held proof that could destroy everything. And somewhere in Manhattan, Michael Hawthorne stood beside a window overlooking the city. Watching. Waiting. Knowing exactly what had just been discovered. A faint smile crossed his face. Not because he was happy. Because the game had finally begun.